Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES-TV.
Hello, Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, democracy, by its nature, sometimes creates turmoil, and this week provided a good example with continued reaction to both the Supreme Court ruling on abortion and a delay on congressional redistricting. Also, a New Orleans poll showed growing dissatisfaction among voters, some of which may be caused by a severe shortage of police officers in the city. We'll be discussing those stories, but first, news of a natural supplement that some locals are turning to for a wide variety of health reasons. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources. ERROL LABORDE, producer of Informed Sources. John SIMERMAN, staff writer, the TIMES-PICAYUNE, the New Orleans Advocate. Meg FARRIS, medical reporter, WWL-TV, Channel 4. And Matt SLEDGE, reporter, the TIMES-PICAYUNE, the New Orleans Advocate. And Meg, we're going to start with you because you reported recently on, it's a nutritional supplement that people have been turning to in increasing numbers that can just address all kinds of things.
You know, this all started out, Marcia, when I heard that people, baby boomers, middle-aged people, were going to get this natural supplement infused in them, and they said they had all this energy, and they slept better, and they thought better, their brains were better. And when we started digging into the story, we found out that not only were people doing it for that reason, but they were doing it for anti-inflammation with heart disease. They were using it for Alzheimer's to slow the progression down. Then we found on the North Shore the very first clinic, it's 22 years old, that is using it, and people are coming from all over the country to treat alcoholism and addiction to other drugs. And the anecdotal, and I should stress, anecdotal stories that these people are telling is that it's life-changing.
And so tell us, what is this supplement? What's it called?
It's called NAD, or in some forms it's NADH. It stands for a very long chemical name, which you know, people will not remember, but it's a coenzyme that's naturally in your body. And what it does, it's responsible for many, many, many different processes of every cell in your body, from the metabolism of the cell to the genetic, keep making sure that when it reproduces itself, the genes are okay in it. So many, many processes. So think about it. If each cell is healthy, you are healthier, because when cells start to die, organs start to die, and then you do.
So this natural supplement that we have, this natural thing that's in us, we have more of it as we're younger, and we lose it as we age, from what I understand. It sort of decreases, put it that way.
That's absolutely right. Now, I will tell you, fitness expert Mackie Shilstone has used it in a high school athlete who had overtrained so much, had chronic fatigue. He was a wrestler, couldn't finish matches, and then ended up getting up off the mat and winning the state championship. This was years ago. So athletes use it for athletic performance, younger people as well, and some are coming to these infusion places to get it before taking exams because they said you sleep better and the cognitive clarity is better by putting this in their bodies.
So you say infusion places. Well, you mentioned Springfield Wellness Center, right, in Springfield, Louisiana. There are other places where you can go for an infusion, which is what, an IV type of infusion is what you're talking about?
Yes, so I'll clarify the three different things we talked about. So you can go to a place like Maxwell Nutrition that has, you can just buy the supplement like you'd buy a vitamin or something over the counter, and you can take that every day. Then there are these medical spas. The one we went to is Support IV. It's in Mandeville, and I believe they have some places that they're going to open in New Orleans, where it's medically supervised by doctors, but there are nurse practitioners and those type of people there who are taking your medical history and giving you infusions to feel better for anti-aging. And then Springfield Wellness Center is a place where some people stay, spend the night, who come there for serious heroin, crack addiction, alcoholism, and they come from all over. and Alzheimer's, and they get infused there. That seems to be the more serious, not for the feeling better component.
So, as you mentioned, anecdotally, because this is not regulated by the FDA, what are we hearing anecdotally from people who have done this, or even from folks, from medical folks who are administering it?
So I will tell you that I have heard from, well, they have doctors on staff at Springfield who say, yes, there are none of these huge double-blind, placebo-controlled, peer-reviewed studies in journals because it's a natural supplement. So they don't have the big pharma millions behind it to do these studies. But there are plenty of cellular studies. There are animal studies, which don't always translate to humans, we should say that, that show that it does have regenerative properties and metabolic. It does make a difference in the metabolism of the cells. There's nothing that shows that there's something harmful about it. But now, anecdotally, the patients at Springfield say they get off of drugs. One man we spoke with was a Marine veteran who has PTSD, and he has TBI, traumatic brain injury, from his service. He said he was on crack, heroin, painkillers, you know, over-the-counter opioids, and he said 14 years clean and stopped craving it. And that's what was so intriguing. Alzheimer's patient, yes, he has Alzheimer's, but it's been 17 years, and his neurologist is surprised that he's not progressing faster. And his mother, who also had Alzheimer's, went much faster. So they are studying it. They are writing case studies, and they also have gotten doctors from outside, independent doctors, to do some studies on this. So it's still being looked into.
When you said that the Alzheimer's, he's surprised that he's not progressing faster, you mean not declining faster? Is that what you're...
Correct. His cognitive decline, his short-term memory isn't going as fast as his mother's did when she had the same disease. Now, the patient we interviewed is 76 years old. He still drives. He goes and gets treatment. You can clearly tell when you're with him that there are some short-term memory issues, like he couldn't remember if he had had his birthday and how old he was, but he's functioning. He's functioning.
Now, this does not cure disease.
100% no one can say that. And I asked one of the people who owns and runs the wellness center, I said, you're not saying this is a cure for Parkinson's, pain, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, you know, the whole list went on drug, and she said no. She said, but to the people who don't use anymore, to them it's a personal cure.
Sure. And so there are the infusions that you mentioned, but also Maxwell, that's not a place for infusion. That you can get capsules there, or tablets?
A supplement store. Here's the thing, Marcia. So there's, you know, anything that you want to supplement your body with. Like, for instance, I get my 3 hormones, testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone, every month, since my ovaries don't make them anymore. But I get a blood level to know how much do I need. There's no test, they tell me, to say, oh, you are this deficient, so you need this much NAD. But they, you know, some assume, well, if you're middle-aged, then you're deficient in it. So that's the caveat. But what they've said is that there haven't been overdoses, that people haven't had problems from taking too much. But they say 20 years, they know how much to dose people.
Okay, very, very interesting, Meg. Really, thanks a lot for bringing that information to us.
And one quick thing, always check with your doctor whenever you're going on a supplement.
Absolutely. All right, Meg, thanks a lot. Errol, let's go on over to you. Congressional redistricting in the state of Louisiana, delayed.
And we should just add to Meg also that it's not covered by insurance. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. It is not covered by insurance.
Okay. Well, who the next congressman is going to be is not insured either, okay? There's been a lot of turmoil in the redistricting. Now, the question goes back, as we went into this year, when you do the redistricting, that there was a feeling that of the 6 congressional districts, that 2 of them should have a black majority just because of the way that the population is. And so that was the objective of a lot of people. The legislature dealt with it during their session. They came up with a plan that maintained 5 white majority districts and 1 black majority district. The governor vetoed it. The legislature overrode the governor's veto. It went to a district court judge in Baton Rouge who overrode the legislature and says, no, you got to have 2 black majority districts, and you got to do it by this certain date. the certain date came and the legislature hadn't done anything. And so the judge says, well, I'm going to do it. And I think the legislature purposely wanted this to be thrown into the court system. So this past Wednesday, the Judge Dick in Baton Rouge, was supposed to announce her plan. Well, all of a sudden the Supreme Court says, well, not so fast. Let's put this on hold right now until the fall, because there's a similar case in Alabama. And we don't want to, people will be ruling on one precedent in one state and another one in another. So what seems to be happening is that the districts that the legislature drew up this year, which would be 5 white majority and 1 black majority, will be what's in place when we have the elections this year, the fall elections. And so that'll be in place. Now, probably, I would imagine that by 2 years later, in 2024, all this will be resolved, and you could possibly have that second black district, but there's still more time to do that. The feeling has been that if there is a plan that has a second black majority district, it will be the 5th district, which is starts right around Baton Rouge and goes up the eastern end of the state, around Alexandria, then goes up to the Monroe area. So I guess that quadrant of the state, if that is in place, that is currently Julia Letlow's district. She was the one who was elected in a special election after this tragedy where her husband was elected to the seat and died of COVID before he could take office. And so she was elected. So possibly Julia Letlow will be able to run and serve 2 more years. And then who knows what's going to happen. Right. But a possibility then will be that in 2 years from now, it'll be a majority black district. Let me just point out one thing, though, is that this is always talked about in terms of black districts and white district. Way down deep inside, this isn't really as much about race as it's about power in terms of which party is going to be the most is going to be the most dominant in the House of Representatives. It's really close right now. The Democrats have 224 seats. The Republicans have 212. And so which party is the majority gets all the committee chairmen, gets the Speaker of the House, right. Gets all the party membership. And so it's really about that power place and the power into the future more than it is about race per se. Okay.
And qualifying for those congressional seats starts, what, in July, I think?
Yeah.
This month, and we are in July now. Okay, E, thanks a lot. Let's go on over to you, John, and we keep hearing about it, and it just keeps getting worse, really, and that is the NOPD shortage of police officers.
It does. What we're seeing in New Orleans is a serious shrinking of the police department, and it's been going on in earnest for the last year and a half, and when you look a little closer, it's coming out both ends. It's a lot of people leaving the department, a lot more than usual, more than 150, a little more than 150 last year. That trend has continued this year in the first 6 months. And you're seeing not as many people interested in becoming New Orleans Police Department officers, a steep reduction in applications, which has resulted in very few new hires over that same period. So what we've lost basically is 1/6 of the manpower of the force in the last year and a half. There are no real signs that that is going to turn around anytime soon. It's a lot of big city police departments are going through similar. It looks to be a little more acute in New Orleans, where we're also experiencing the highest homicide rate in the nation.
So what are the numbers at right now for the NOPD?
We're a little below 1,000. We've lost, I'm told, more than a dozen since I reported on this just recently. So we're below 1,000. This is uncharted territory. We haven't been this low in officer numbers in at least 50 years, I believe. There was Mitch Landrieu, who froze hiring of new officers to make up for a huge budget gap left from the Nagin years. Started up again around 2013, 2014, got a little momentum going, started spreading, across the country looking for people, and they did manage to for a time, boost the number of officers. That's since fallen off the shelf.
Why is there such a problem now with so many officers leaving?
Well, if you look at, I've spoken with several of these officers who've recently left, and there was a recent survey that NOPD commissioned that says pay really isn't the primary reason. The NOPD pay is comparable or better than a lot of local agencies that officers might jump to. A lot of it has to do with some morale issues. The complaints include politics in promotions, favoritism in promotions. They include overzealous discipline by the Public Integrity Bureau, which is the internal affairs arm of the NOPD, and a lack of support. And some of the restrictions that the 10-year-old federal consent decree governing the NOPD has handed these officers in terms of their ability, they think, to do their jobs.
How does this reflect on the police chief? Do they feel like the police chief is behind them?
Some do, some don't. Some officers I've spoken with, a lot of them are officers who have just left and are disgruntled and have issues with how Superintendent Ferguson has been in supporting them and in terms of the discipline, again, that he signs off on for some of the, what they're complaining about.
So are we seeing the same kind of problem in our neighboring police departments?
Baton Rouge has experienced similar, though I don't think to the degree. You talk to national experts and they say this is really a big city problem. The number of police officers nationally has declined by a couple of percentage points, but the big drops you're seeing tend to be in the big cities.
All right, and so let's go on over to Matt right now, because going hand in hand kind of with this large way is a poll that was conducted for the New Orleans Crime Coalition done by Ron Fauché, and that poll sort of indicates, a concern over the problem that John was just talking about.
Yeah, there was, in that poll, a huge percentage of New Orleanians said that crime and public safety are the biggest issues facing the city. 75% of respondents in that poll felt like the city was generally on the wrong track. And of course, neither of those numbers are good for New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell, who has seen just a steep, steep drop in her approval rating, and voters singled her out for poor handling of crime in particular.
Okay, and regarding, the police department, let's sort of stay with that right now. What did this poll show? What are sentiments about the police department, the community? How does the community feel about its police department, the NOPD?
Yeah, so it's a two-part poll. One was kind of on the politics, the mayor, and then the other looked at policing issues. And there has also been a pretty significant erosion in kind of confidence in the police department. John talked about the high number of homicides we're having in New Orleans right now. I think that's one part of it. But you've also, with this shrinking police department, got fewer officers to respond to 911 calls. So even with kind of minor so-called quality of life issues that people call 911 about, they're waiting longer for police to come. Maybe the police show up the next day and they're no longer there to tell the officer about what their problem was. And I think on a day-to-day basis, that's probably a lot of what erodes confidence in the police department.
Regarding the politics, let's go back to the mayor's numbers. Really dropped pretty steeply. I mean, is this a usual thing?
The folks I talked to say it's not unusual for a mayor's numbers to drop between the first and the second term. Maybe some of the enthusiasm they generated at the start, the momentum they had, is starting to lessen in the second term. What is unusual is for just how steep of a drop it's been. 18 points between June 2021 and this month, and June 2022. And also, you look at the context, this mayor, LaToya Cantrell, was just reelected by a very wide margin, in large part because nobody, with large amounts of political backing wanted to run against her. So it's pretty amazing when you think about it. She was able to clear the field last year, scare off anybody who might run against her, and then all of a sudden, 6 months into her second term, she's underwater in her approval rating.
And so we're seeing a drop among those who have supported her in the past.
Yeah, I mean, she had 62% approval a year ago, and now she's at 44% approval. So just definitionally, there are people who used to think the mayor was doing a pretty good job. I will say, when you dig down into the numbers, one really interesting facet of this poll is that the mayor herself has higher approval ratings than on some of the specific issues that she's handling, like crime and public safety, which kind of suggests that people still like the mayor personally, but don't love the policies that she's implementing.
So what else did this poll show in terms of satisfaction, dissatisfaction, and concerns among those respondents regarding what's happening in the city of New Orleans?
Just general dissatisfaction with everything, I think. You know, that 75% wrong track number is pretty startling. I think there's only 18% of people who say that we're on the right track. And the poll looked mostly at crime and public safety, but it's not hard to think about some of the issues that could be contributing to that. You know, we've got whatever the economy is doing right now nationally, which of course has local effects, and people blame the politician closest to them, you know, even though the mayor has no control over gas prices. And then you've got these really local issues that are clearly under local control, like the sanitation issue, and people look out their front door and see that the trash isn't getting picked up, and they blame the mayor for that.
Yeah, the city's really had a problem with that, even before Ida. And then there's also, of course, streets. That had to show up somewhere, right?
Yes, that was polled, and people are not satisfied with the city's handling of infrastructure issues. This has been something that's been bubbling up for, you know, maybe a year and a half. Just the start and stop nature of all these roadwork projects, of these, you know, $2 billion total road and water line projects that we have underway right now. So it's something that has been on the administration's radar for a while, these complaints, and they keep saying that they're going to improve it, that they're going to, you know, make these projects more efficient. And, you know, they are now just kind of doing this big total pause. There's a new infrastructure czar who says it's his job to get out in the streets every day and physically lay eyes on these projects. So, you know, I think there's a real sense of urgency around those road projects as well.
So okay, go ahead, E.
I was going to say, if you look at, for a couple of years in their first term, mayors, as indeed mayors around the world and governors around the world, that the big issue was COVID. And with COVID, they really got to be authority figures more than anything else. That overshadowed all other issues. And so they became the person in control. And, you know, will they let us go back into restaurants? Will they say we don't have to wear masks anymore? And so at that time, they really got to take a leadership position. Now that that's pretty much over, at least we hope it's over, I think that the other issues are starting to surface more, and people are paying more attention to it. And also about her election, you know, when you have a two-term limit, when you finish your first term, a lot of people who might want to run say, well, I'm going to wait until after this next term because she's going to be term limited. And so I think some of the opposition that might have been there didn't surface because they just wanted to wait 4 years.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot, Matt. And E, we're going to stick with you right now because you wanted to comment a bit about the Supreme Court decision, Roe v. Wade, overturned, and the action that the New Orleans City Council has taken regarding that.
Well, the City Council has taken a fairly firm stance. You know, there's so much to still figure out from all of this, but the possibility exists, the way that the ruling came down, that people could be prosecuted under this law if they have an abortion or if they administer an abortion. Now, quickly, a lot of, especially in urban areas, figures are trying to say, well, we're not going to prosecute. I mean, the district attorney has done that here. But the council is taking a fairly firm stance on it, too. They introduced, 3 of the council members introduced a resolution this week calling on the city not to spend any funds for the prosecution or investigation of any abortion-related matters. And also saying that of all the city issues, that any sort of legal issue should be the city's last priority. And the council members took fairly firm stands saying all the sort of things that you hear in this debate. And so they introduced it this week, and it comes up for a vote at the next council meeting. You could tell it's going to obviously pass. But it's kind of in keeping with a lot of other cities are doing. Atlanta's doing, and probably, you know, a lot of cities that had plans in waiting just had that in mind. And so I think this thing's been on on the top shelf for a while, and now they're implementing it. But the city's taken a pretty firm stand on this issue.
Now, this is a resolution, so what force does it have?
Well, if the city council, they control the budget, okay? And if they're talking about the way that the budget is being used and how money is being spent, they control the budget for the district attorney's office, for the police department. So I think they could have some force in that.
Okay, but this is a state law that they're asking that no dollars be spent, no city dollars be spent on enforcing. Is that correct?
Well, this is dedicated to the city, okay? That they're saying that city funds not be used for prosecution or investigation, yeah.
Okay, as you said, there's a lot that really needs, a lot of questions still to be answered regarding all of this. So I guess we'll see how it all works out. Okay.
But one question is not where the city stands on it. They're pretty firm about this.
Yeah. All righty, E, let's stick with you with other stories.
Okay, well, the Essence Festival is starting this week, and there's always been some concern about their contract expires, I think, like in 2 years, and there's been some concern whether they want to come back. Well, this week, the executive director of Essence Magazine says flatly, we will come back. We love New Orleans. New Orleans needs us. We need New Orleans. And so we shouldn't be anywhere else other than New Orleans. And so look for Essence to be here for a while.
All right, and certainly this weekend. It's all happening this weekend. Yeah. All right, E. Meg, let's go on over to you.
Two quick things on the quality of life New Orleans side. People in the French Quarter and downtown have been complaining that we're going to lose tourists because of the huge number of people who are living on the street, having sex on the street, passed out on the street. A lot of that is because of the fentanyl, the drugs, the mental illness that's not treated. And on the health side, fish oil, fish oil, fish oil. Take it, we need it womb to tomb. And it was discovered right at LSU Health that it is protective for your brain and your lung cells if you get COVID.
All righty, just a lot of good health advice from Meg today. Thanks a lot, Meg. Okay, John, over to you.
Well, District Attorney Jason Williams is set to go to trial in a couple of weeks on federal tax fraud charges. As part of that, federal prosecutors this week filed charges against a former attorney in his private criminal law practice, Gregory Souser. It's a misdemeanor, 4 misdemeanor counts that he was charged with, and he is expected to cooperate. It was filed in a bill of information, which usually indicates somebody who's cooperating and will plead guilty.
Okay. All right, Matt, over to you.
New Orleans has to build this new controversial jail building for people with mental and medical health problems. Mayor Cantrell and Sheriff Susan Hudson have both been very opposed to it, so it's going to be interesting to see how they respond, see if they try to pursue any kind of long shot appeal or if they're just forced to build this thing now.
Because the latest opinion was issued by Fifth Circuit, right?
Correct.
The Circuit Court of
Fifth
Appeals.
Circuit Court.
Right. All right, guys, thank you all for being here, and thank you all for joining us, too. We want to see you again next week for Informed Sources. Meanwhile, have a wonderful, happy, and safe 4th of July weekend. See you next week.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES-TV.